For a game like Clash Royale, it's super important that the developers keep updating the game, not only to maintain interest in the game but also to optimize revenue. However, there are some instances where updates to the game have been so negative on the game that they either resulted in many players quitting the game overall and thereby decreasing the interest in the game, but also leaving a sour taste in the mouths of players who enjoyed the game but couldn't handle truly how horrible the updates were. So in this video, I want to explore the worst updates in the game's history and also look at why they had the impact that they did on the game. Some updates in Clash Royale aren't horrible in terms of new content, but because new features in the game are so overhyped and then seem underwhelming when it's first introduced, many players may be inclined to say that the update is just bad. And there is no better example of this than the 2017 Touchdown update. Touchdown was a super innovative update to Clash Royale. I think the idea is really fun and it adds so much diverse content into the game. But the Touchdown update of 2017 was overhyped more than any update in the entire history of Clash Royale, even more than the Clan Wars 2 update. For starters, in their marketing for the update, Clash Royale called it the biggest update ever, which is a pretty serious thing to claim for an update in Clash Royale. And then the team had been teasing the update for 8 whole weeks, which next to Clan Wars 2 might not seem like a lot, but in the case of the Touchdown update, this was constant teasing rather than the occasional conversation like with the Clan Wars 2 update. Additionally, in celebration of the event being released into the game, there was a huge tournament held with massive content creators to promote the game mode. Clash Royale didn't talk about quests as much as they did for Touchdown, but quests were a massive addition to the game. So going into this update, Clash Royale wanted players to know that this would be their biggest update ever. But in reality, it was almost the opposite. Touchdown was filled with glitches. Many of these included the game's aspect ratio being distorted for some devices. Sometimes if a card had crossed the line but began to target another card, it wouldn't register as a touchdown, and overall, the game mode just felt unfinished. But there was also some unfair advantages given to some players. Cards like Hog Rider and Golem were fundamentally more broken in Touchdown, since the Hog Rider moves fast, and the Golem is able to tank many shots from opposing troops, and distract the opponent while your other troops move towards the touchdown line. And many players argue that they just didn't like the game mode as a whole. While it could be argued that these players didn't have to play the game mode, since it was optional, I think it's pretty fair that they were expressing how they felt, especially since Clash Royale really wanted players to like Touchdown, to the point it was almost forceful. On top of that, the fact that it actually cost gems to compete in Touchdown events after the first free event was kinda weird, especially since Clash Royale clearly wanted players to play the game mode, but were basically locking it behind a gem wall. And even though quests did boost gem progression, it still felt really weird to have to pay gems to compete in an event that was hyped up this much. I think this Redditor explains it almost perfectly. Touchdowns seemed like a great idea for the game, but the horrible execution by Clash Royale made it a very hated addition to the update by the community overall. I think that this one is pretty controversial, but I think that the Goblin update is up there as one of the worst updates in the game's history. Sure, it brought a lot of new content to the game, but the more you think about it, the more you realize how much of a cash grab it was. So let's first start with the card releases. The Goblin update brought so many new cards into the game, and it was the first time in years that we saw this many cards release in one go. At first, I was really excited about the update, since it was hyped up so much by Supercell, and they really went all out with their marketing. But when the new cards were released into the game, they were insanely broken. Starting with the Goblin Curse. At release, its damage multiplier was so high that it was purely a damage booster to cards, and many players saw the Goblin spawn ability as just a bonus. Additionally, its radius was so much larger than today, meaning it would allow a larger amount of troops to get that damage booster. And keep in mind here, 50% damage amplification is a lot, so for only 2 elixir, it became a must-have in all decks. But then there's the Goblin Machine. For some reason, its rocket damage was the same for crown towers as it was for troops, so that made the machine extremely strong, since a small connection to the tower would result in almost 1000 damage. On top of that, the Goblin Machine would also shoot so often that it just became an annoying card to deal with. And finally, there's the Goblin Demolisher. His damage radius was so large at release that his explosion damage would almost always connect to the tower even if you defended well. Despite it being so strong, some players had actually called it a pretty weak card, since the other 2 Goblin cards were that strong. So now we look at the first issue with the update. The lack of balance in the new cards meant that grand challenges and other aspects of the game had just become super chaotic. And while it was pretty fun for the first couple of games, it just became boring and repetitive. The usage rate of the Goblin Machine and Goblin Curse was over 70% after its release, and even the Mirror recorded a 60% usage rate, which is always a bad sign when it comes to the meta. However, what was so much worse was the fact that Clash Royale made extremely expensive shop offers for each of these broken cards on release day. Now, this already showed players that the update was kind of a cash grab, but the fact that Clash Royale gave small emergency nerfs to the broken cards was almost like them saying to the player base, hey, we nerfed the card slightly so you can see it and think, I need to buy this card before it gets seriously nerfed, so buy it before it gets a nerf that will kill the card. This move already left a pretty sour taste in the mouths of Clash Royale players as it started to unfold the true reason that they made this update.
Crabs.
Hello, I like money.
Which leads me on to my second point, Goblin Ladder. It was a really smart idea by Clash Royale, and honestly, in the future I can see how it paves the way for a much better temporary game mode, such as 4-card ladder. But the Goblin Ladder system got boring very fast. Most players were grinding Goblin Ladder because you could unlock the broken Goblin Machine and Goblin Curse along the path, but also because of the limited emotes. There were very few players who were playing because they truly enjoyed Goblin Ladder. Sure, it might seem like a pretty fun idea to fill a Goblin Elixir bar as Goblin cards were played, but I feel like the execution wasn't the greatest. The fact that the entire path had around 4,000 trophies to get through meant that it became a meaningless grind after around 1,000 trophies. But then again, a great way to speed up your progress would be to spend money. So the Goblin Ladder really incentivized players to spend money. So the issue with the update wasn't the actual content. I think the actual content was pretty good and a step in the right direction for the game. However, the fact that Clash Royale monetized almost everything about the update just made it seem like a massive cash grab, and it didn't help that the game mode it featured quickly became boring and extremely underwhelming. So yeah, while it wasn't great, it's still far from the worst update in Clash Royale. If we're talking about bad updates in the game, there's no way we can't talk about Clan Wars 2. One of the biggest issues with the update was how long it took to be released after being initially teased. During 2020, Clash Royale would occasionally talk about Clan Wars 2, but later confirmed that it would release during August 2020. So this update was hyped up for around 6 months, which I've never seen in any update ever other than the touchdown event. And also, the update released on the very last day of August in 2020. So at that point, Clash Royale should have just said September 2020 and saved themselves from being heavily memed on by the internet here. I mean, 2020 was a super chaotic year, for not just Clash Royale but also the whole world, so it kind of made sense that it was taking a while. But I think that Supercell were in a tough situation here, as the player base was demanding for a major update throughout the entire year. So now we get on to what happened once the update was actually released into the game. When the update first released, its fundamental problem was already clear. Clan Wars 2 needed heavy and consistent player involvement, which is why big clans often benefited in the river race. Additionally, while making dual decks, you could only use each card once, meaning that you needed 32 different cards at a high enough level to even have a chance of being competitive. Otherwise, you would have been swept by players who had already maxed their accounts and didn't have a restriction on the card choices they had to make. So if Clan Wars 2 was supposed to encourage players to play a wider range of decks, why did they make it so that you only needed higher level cards to do better? And it's not even the fact that higher level cards would give you a better chance of winning. Higher level cards actually gave you more fame when it was first released, or as it is called today, war medals, which is absolutely insane and super unnecessary from Clash Royale here. This is why the unfair matchmaking became one of the biggest issues with Clan Wars 2. Since it wasn't that the game was becoming less fun, it actually made players feel pressure from their clan that they weren't performing, and therefore leading to the game not being played for fun anymore, but instead it was being played to grind out clan rewards, which leads me on to my second point. In this update, Clash Royale removed quests from the game, which keep in mind was one of the best additions to the game ever. Their reasoning kind of made sense, since they talked about how Clan Wars 2 would give similar rewards to the old quest system. But this came with a major catch. Only clans who consistently ranked higher and reached the finish line first got these better rewards. Clans who were lower level and didn't have as many active members got much worse rewards. So this update really only benefited competitive clans rather than the entire player base. So now, Clash Royale was locking essential progression behind a broken and pay-to-win part of the game. And on top of that, higher ranked clans didn't even need the better rewards, since they were usually pay-to-win and had max decks. The only reason they competed in war was to get war medals and rank higher in the world. On the other hand, lower ranked clans were in desperate need of the rewards, since these players had lost their quest rewards, but they weren't getting the rewards that they used to due to the unfair system. It was a situation of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. On top of that, many active clans would often finish on the first day, and then have nothing to do for the rest of the week, so the game mode became super repetitive, something we saw with the Goblin Ladder update. The fact that it had very limited game mode options also took the fun out of playing War, since Clan Wars 1 had multiple game mode options at least, but Clan Wars 2 also had many exploits and unintended features that benefited specific players, and overall it just made the experience way more boring. Firstly, the entire concept of the boat battle seemed fun at first, until you realized that many active clans made it to the finish line so fast that they never even needed to complete a single boat battle. Also, the war reset would occur based on each player's time zone rather than a set time around the world, so many players that had time zones before others would actually get to play before the other countries, so this took the whole fun out of the river race, since some clans had a major head start. Also, there was no cooldown on players being able to join a clan and then participating in war, so some players from opposing clans would actually join rival clans and then purposely lose duels so that they wouldn't get enough fame and then leave the clan, so that the other clan would then win the river race. And this wasn't the only exploit of leaving and joining clans. Since every player in a clan was able to participate in clan war regardless of how new you are to the clan, players realized that they could complete their daily task, leave the clan and rejoin the clan, where it would reset and then they would be able to repeat the same duels without the 24-hour cooldown, meaning some clans were rapidly making it to the finish line, taking the whole fun out of Clan Wars. And I can't talk about Clan Wars without mentioning how glitchy the update was. It showed players that somehow the update seemed rushed, even though the dev team had so much time to work on the update. Clan Wars 2 did have a saving grace though. Supercell actually fixed many of the bugs and exploits in the successive updates, and the community managers admitted to the mistakes they made. Clan Wars 2 will go down as one of the worst updates in the game's entire history, mostly due to the terrible reward system, many exploits, and being overhyped way too much. However, it doesn't even come close to the worst update in Clash Royale history. The original Clash Royale will go down as the best but also the worst event in Clash Royale history, and you're probably thinking, how exactly would that be possible? Well, it simply comes down to timing. Clash Royale was this massive event that occurred during late 2021. Supercell had created it with the intention of letting many players upgrade their cards to higher levels by playing the game more and participating in unique events. The main parts of the event included a 50% discount on all card upgrades, special 200k gold rushes, free daily gold rewards, and many special challenges. So clearly, Clash Royale was trying to get its players to spend gold and upgrade their cards. Seems harmless, right? Well, it wasn't as good as it seemed. Before I continue, I think it's super important to understand a fundamental part of the game's card collection system. Before level 15 was even a thing, when a card reached max level and you got extra cards from, let's say, a chest, instead of the card being added to the stack like it normally would, you would gain star points and gold as compensation for Clash Royale taking the card away, if that makes sense. So that means that any additional cards you get after maxing out a card aren't actually added to your account. Instead, it is replaced with star points and gold. Keep this in mind since it's super important in the context of level 14. Shortly after Clash Royale ended, Clash Royale announced level 14. The weird thing about level 14 is that the card requirements to get a card from level 13 to 14 was made to be the same as it used to be from level 12 to 13. For example, before the update, upgrading a common from level 12 to 13 would require 5,000 common cards. When level 14 was added, this was made to be the same, so now upgrading a common from level 13 to 14 would need 5,000 common cards. And upgrading a common from level 12 to 13 now needed 3,000 cards instead. So essentially, Clash Royale reduced the cards you needed to upgrade cards after level 14 was added. So in a way, Clash Royale had decreased the total number of cards needed to get a card from level 1 to 13. This became a huge issue in the context of Clash Royale. Clash Royale rewarded players who spent gold to upgrade cards to level 13. However, extra cards you received during the event would just disappear and get converted to more gold and star points, as I talked about before. So using the example of legendary cards, once level 14 dropped, all your level 13 cards would have a progress of 0 out of 20, since the event didn't consider extra cards getting added to your inventory, since you were at the max level during the event. However, if a player had waited on upgrading their cards, they would have had the overflow cards from their level 12 cards, so that they were now able to upgrade the card to level 13 and then have 10 cards left over, since after the update, an upgrade from level 12 to 13 only needed 10 cards instead of 20. But during the Clash Royale event, an upgrade from level 12 to 13 needed 20 cards. So essentially, a player who didn't upgrade their cards during Clash Royale would have actually been ahead of the players who did upgrade by 10 whole legendary cards. Keep in mind here, one legendary card is worth around 40,000 gold. So at this point, it became clear that the players that had followed the expectation of Clash Royale were scammed out of almost 400,000 gold value. If that example doesn't really make sense, I'll try to explain it using a real legendary card. Suppose that you were playing the Clash Royale event, and you had a level 12 Ice Wizard with 20 out of 20 cards. This may have been possible if you bought the Book of Legendary Cards, or the Book of Books. During Clash Royale, it would have taken 20 cards to get a card from level 12 to 13, and it would have costed you 50,000 gold and 20 Ice Wizard cards. So now, if you upgraded during Clash Royale, you would have been down only 50k gold, and you would have gotten your Ice Wizard to max level, which sounds great, since you are saving 50k gold on upgrading the same Ice Wizard without Clash Royale. Keep in mind, this level 13 Ice Wizard would have no longer been able to stack cards in the collection, and it would have remained as a level 13 card until the event ended. However, say for example that you waited until level 14 and you didn't upgrade your Ice Wizard, you would still have 20 Ice Wizard cards, but now an upgrade from level 12 to 13 would only take away 10 cards from your account, and it would cost you 75,000 gold, since that's how Clash Royale changed the card requirements. So you would be left with a level 13 Ice Wizard that has 10 cards towards level 14. So this would have costed you 75,000 gold and only 10 Ice Wizards instead of 20. Doing the math, we see that if you had waited after the event ended, you would have spent an equivalent of 75,000 gold plus the 10 times 40,000 for each Ice Wizard, which equates to 475,000 gold. However, if you upgraded your Ice Wizard during the event, it would have costed you 50,000 gold plus 20 times 40,000, which is 850,000 gold. So basically, it would have actually been way worse if a player had upgraded their card during Clash Royale than if they had just waited until the event ended and upgraded their cards after the event ended. This became a massive scandal, as players were now missing millions of gold, thousands of cards, and even real-life money gone down the drain because of the level 14 update being conveniently after the Clash Royale event. It was Clash Royale that had encouraged players to spend their gold, but it was actually better to not spend any gold during the event. The fact that Clash Royale made it better for players who didn't spend gold during event when you were meant to spend gold as much as possible was super shady, and honestly pretty weird. To me, this is one of the shadiest things that Clash Royale has ever done, and it would definitely be the worst update in the game's history by a huge margin if it weren't for the fact that all players were reimbursed with the cards that they lost during the Clash Royale event due to the overflow system. However, since players weren't reimbursed the gold that they spent, it was still a net negative for the player base, and also it ruined the reputation of Clash Royale as being scammers for trying to be generous. Looking back on 2023 for Clash Royale makes me realize how lost the developers of the game were, and this is shown no better than with the update for losers. I will mention now that level 15 and evolutions were actually a separate update, since the update for losers was the Q1 2023 update, and level 15 and evolutions were the Q2 update. So I won't talk about that in this section, but knowing how bad that update was, you can kinda expect it to show up in this video, and honestly, that update is its own can of worms. I honestly don't even know where to start with this update. I tried so hard to think of something good that came out of this update and I still struggled. At least with the level 14 update, players were compensated for their losses, so there was one positive that came out of that update. So let's first talk about the Pass Royale nerf. A Pass Royale nerf was imminent. I mean, at $5 the 2022 Pass Royale was providing way too much value, and that's probably why the game was so popular during this time. So we all knew that it had to be nerfed eventually, otherwise players would be maxing out their cards way too fast and Supercell would run out of progression for players. But the nerf they gave honestly made no sense, even from an economical standpoint. Clash Royale reworked the Pass Royale by giving rewards every 5 crowns instead of the old 10, but the catch here was that this would only be for Pass Royale players. Free-to-play players still had the crown chests every 10 crowns, but on top of that, Clash Royale removed the Royal Wild Chest and the Book of Cards from the free pass, so the free pass had just become a bare-bones version of its past self. While it wasn't a major loss for free-to-play players due to the addition of the Season Shop, which had the rewards from the old free pass, the nerf to the Pass Royale was a major nerf for players who normally paid for the Pass Royale. To start, Clash Royale split the Pass Royale into 2 tiers, with the gold tier being $1 more than the old pass, and the diamond tier being more than double the price. So you would think that with this major price increase, they would add more rewards, right? Nope. Not even close. In fact, they actually reduced the rewards. For starters, Clash Royale removed the Book of Books from the Pass Royale, which is the most valuable magic item in the game's entire history, being able to cover up to 20 champion cards. On top of that, they also removed the magic coin, so that was like Clash Royale immediately taking away 100k gold worth of rewards. The April 2023 Pass Royale was easily one of the worst offers in the game's entire history, since it didn't even have evolutions included, so Clash Royale made it seem like a great deal by by adding new cosmetic items such as animated banners, and making it seem like it was great value by adding a champion in the last tier, but no one fell for this. I mean, if a company were to double the price of a good, you would expect that they would add something to it, right? But Clash Royale did the opposite of this and made it worse while charging extra. This confused me so much, since I actually think it would have been a pretty good nerf if Clash Royale raised the price of the Pass Royale 1.0 to $8 or maybe even $9, but kept it the exact same. I know that this would get a lot of backlash, but it would still be absolutely broken, and Clash Royale could have played it off as raising prices due to inflation. And that's not even the worst part of the update. The season shop was a pretty decent update, but the fact that it served as a replacement for the rewards that they removed from the Pass Royale kind of made it seem like Clash Royale wanted players to grind for both the tiers in the Pass Royale, but also grind for season tokens. All the update was about was to grind to get more resources. So in the end, it kind of seemed more like the update for... I probably shouldn't finish that. But overall, the season shop wasn't actually that bad. It just felt like a meaningless grind. At least free-to-play players still got the choice on what magic items and champions they wanted, and what wildcards they also wanted. The big problem came with the end of season conversion rate. For some reason, the initial conversion rate was 10 season tokens for 1 gold. So 1000 season token, 1 day's worth of free to play, would only be worth 100 gold. Meanwhile, you could have bought 2000 gold for 400 season tokens. So this was an absolutely horrible conversion rate. It was like Clash Royale punishing players for making a simple mistake, but it still gets worse. Clash Royale also for some reason nerfed masteries to give less gems, but provided the illusion that they were fairly compensating players by adding gold rewards to replace it, but with the excuse that their data showed that players were hoarding gems. Again, this just goes to show how lost the developers were during 2023. Of course players were hoarding gems, because they were so rare, and the only decent way to spend them, being a free-to-play player, would be on royal tournaments. And the gold they gave to compensate was so small that it was almost disrespectful. It rivals the gem to gold offer in the shop, which all players know is absolutely terrible. Again, this felt like Clash Royale was just making it harder for free-to-play players to progress, and incentivizing pay to win. And you probably expected it at this point, but the disrespect towards the community still got worse. It was discovered that Clash Royale was actually slowly nerfing chests over time to give less wildcards. And at this point, I was actually debating quitting the game. The fact that Clash Royale was reducing the chances of wildcards in all chests without even once mentioning it was so scummy, and left a sour taste in my mouth. Especially after the scam of Clash Royale and the promise that Clash Royale wouldn't let the community down again. On top of that, Clash Royale also removed the crown and chest rewards from 2v2, which was later re-added but only due to heavy community backlash. I also didn't really want to talk about Path of Legends since it's not really an update that came with this update, but the fact that it was Mega Draft also made it pretty stale in the season that the update for losers was released. To me, this is easily one of the worst updates of all time, but it still somehow gets much worse. The combination of update for losers and level 15 was the first time in my entire career of playing this game that I truly felt bored and annoyed at Clash Royale. To summarize why, in basic terms, was because the Clash Royale team had nerfed the Pass Royale and Mastery so hard to the point where the resources you got were just basic cards, gems, and gold. And on top of that, they made level 15 the hardest upgrade between a level in the game's entire history. It was almost like they tried to make as many players pay to win as possible, by making being a free-to-play player as annoying and slow as possible. It was honestly disgusting. So let's first talk about the update in terms of gameplay. Essentially, Clash Royale had advertised level 15 as being this no gold update, which seemed pretty good at first, but when it actually got released into the game, it was so unrealistic to get a level 15 card that it was honestly pretty hilarious. Clash Royale stated that a player would need to get 50,000 elite wildcards to upgrade a single card from level 14 to 15. To give you an idea of how stupidly difficult this was, when the update first released, the most valuable rarity in the game, a champion, would only give you 500 elite wildcards, which was kinda like a spit in the face to the player base. So with this conversion rate, it would have taken 100 champion cards to upgrade a card from level 14 to 15. And keep in mind here, it only takes 20 champions to get a card from level 13 to level 14. So a 5 times jump was absolutely insane. I mean, I think it would have actually been 100 times better if Clash Royale just made it 200,000 gold and then increased it by the same factor as the other levels. So already, this update seemed pretty horrible. Luckily though, Clash Royale did change its conversion rate, but only after after extremely heavy backlash. But as with all the updates on this list, it does get much worse. Shortly after the update, Clash Royale released this offer into the shop, and this offer was such a joke. First of all, it completely contradicted the statement that said level 15 would not cost any gold, since clearly it was costing 1.5 million gold if you were to buy elite wildcards using gold, which keep in mind is 15 times more expensive than the level 13 to 14 upgrade. That's pretty expensive for an upgrade that wasn't meant to cost any gold, don't you think? But I guess that wasn't really an issue, since Clash Royale offered 50,000 elite wildcards for the low price of $10 US. I don't know about you, but $10 to upgrade a single card by one level is such a waste of money. With this conversion rate, it would have costed you over $1,000 to upgrade your entire card collection by one level. As Ballad pointed out, this update meant that even if you were a fully maxed player going into this update, you were only halfway there of completely maxing your card collection with this one level. I honestly think that Clash Royale purposely made the 5,000 elite wildcard shop offer this expensive, just to show free-to-play players and make them feel the need to spend $10 to get some of their cards to elite level. So now you realize this. Clash Royale made it so inconvenient to be a free-to-play player so that they could make more players pay to win. And it still gets worse. Leading up to the level 15 update, the Clash Royale team asked for feedback on whether or not they should release level 15, and they even gave their reasoning on why they were deciding to release level 15. And at first, it seemed very thoughtful that the dev team was actively communicating with the player base on feedback. But what I didn't expect is the team to completely ignore the player base. If that's what the plan was originally, then why did they even bother to make the community post? They could have just released it and saved themselves the backlash on the post. Like I talked about in the update for losers, it just felt like the dev team was so disconnected from the player base here. It's one thing to ask for feedback on an update, but it's a whole other thing to look at that feedback, completely ignore it, and then also go completely against it. And it's not just from the player base that the feedback was ignored. I'm sure you guys know Ballad and his now famous video on the opinion of the monetization of Clash Royale. While watching that video for a second time, there was this specific detail that I noticed that really caught my attention.
They 100% knew, once the information released that 50,000 elite wildcards were required just to get to level 15, there'd be huge backlash. And we told them about this. Creators get the information a little bit early so we can create content, right? All the creators, right when they saw 50,000 elite wildcards, we tried telling them that this was just the biggest mistake, how it adds nothing to the game. It's just senseless grinding for no purpose, no reason. It's just pointless. Time, money, it doesn't add anything to the game, it's not fun.
Now this is so insane. Despite receiving hundreds and even thousands of comments from the player base of their feedback, and even receiving one-to-one feedback from the Clash Royale creators, the Clash Royale team still released level 15 and made it this hard to achieve. It makes you wonder what exactly was going on at Supercell during 2023, but it still gets worse. Clash Royale actually tried to switch up the reasoning for the reason that they made level 15, as this Reddit post pointed out. Before the update, Clash Royale's reasoning for adding a new level was that they noticed that Clash Royale players were upgrading many cards outside their main decks, so they came to the conclusion that players became bored of upgrading cards to max level in their current deck, and began venturing outside their main deck. Fine, that's a pretty reasonable conclusion. What isn't reasonable is the fact that Clash Royale completely switched up after they made the update, with them saying that their data supports the fact that players stop playing after maxing their cards. That's the complete opposite to what they said before releasing the update, and the reason they changed their statement is because in their previous statement, it would have made no sense in the context of level 15, since level 15 was designed to be almost impossible to obtain through normal free-to-play means. Evolutions themselves aren't that bad, to be honest. I think it was actually a pretty decent addition to the game. My only issue with evolutions is how pay to win they are, but I don't think there's much extra to say here. It's pretty controversial, since some players think they ruined the game, but others think it was actually a good part of the game. I think that if Clash Royale didn't make broken evolutions extremely pay to win, it would become something amazing. But for now, it is something that only the paying players really benefit from. To me, this is easily the worst update in Clash Royale's history, and combined with the update for losers, I genuinely don't think there will ever be a sequence of updates in Clash Royale that even comes close to how horrible these updates were. Clash Royale literally has to do the scam of Slash Royale on an unbelievable scale, and then introduce level 16 if they want to rival this update in terms of being the worst update ever. I think that the Clash Royale developer team is an amazing group of individuals, and I think that attacking the developer team is definitely not the right thing to do in this situation, since it's literally not helping anyone. Instead, if as a community we were able to provide meaningful feedback to the community managers, we can help the developer team understand what Clash Royale players really want. I hope you enjoyed this video though. Thanks for watching.